prop before?
Stargate SG-1 wasn't just a TV spin-off nobody asked for. It became the longest-running North American science fiction series in television history, 214 episodes. Across 10 seasons, built on a $6 million pilot, a prop found rotting in a California desert, and a lead actor who only said yes if the show would carry his weight for him.
We'll be fine, sir.
Today we're counting down 14 weird facts about Stargate SG-1. Stick around for number 1, because the man who created the original film despises everything this show became, and he has never stopped saying so. Fact 14. The original Stargate prop was found rotting in a desert before Stargate SG-1 could build its own gate. It needed to know what the gate looked like up close. Production designer Richard Hudolin flew to Los Angeles in 1996 to gather reference material from the 1994 feature film. What he found was not stored in a climate-controlled facility. The original film prop, the physical Stargate used in Roland Emmerich's movie, had been left outside in the California desert. It had been sitting there long enough to severely deteriorate. The elements had done real damage. Hudolin was able to take detailed molds of what remained, giving the television team enough physical information to build their own version from scratch. The new prop was engineered to actually function on camera. The inner ring rotated, the chevrons locked in sequence, and the whole mechanism could be computer-controlled to dial specific gate addresses. The show that would run for a decade built its central icon from the remains of a decaying prop someone had left in a parking lot. Fact 13, the pilot had a $6 million budget and was shot in 6 weeks showtime, made a 2-season commitment to Stargate SG-1 before a single frame had been filmed, 44 episodes guaranteed before the show had proven anything. The 2-hour pilot, Children of the Gods, was given a budget of $6 million. The entire SGC set, the gate room, the control room, the corridors, and all supporting spaces, was designed, built, and dressed within 6 weeks in January and February 1997. Some original set pieces from the feature film were incorporated where they could be salvaged. Principal photography began in Vancouver in February 1997, and the pilot aired July 27th. A network had committed to 2 full seasons of a show whose sets were still being built 6 weeks before the cameras rolled. The speed of the construction and the scale of the network commitment put enormous pressure on a production that was making up the infrastructure of an entire science fiction universe in under 2 months. Fact 12, Anderson only said yes if he didn't have to carry the show alone. Richard Dean Anderson was MacGyver for 7 seasons, 139 episodes of a show that rested almost entirely on his presence, his energy, and his ability to carry every scene. By the time Stargate SG-1 came to him, he had 2 non-negotiable conditions. The first was that his character Jack O'Neill be given more comedic latitude than Kurt Russell's version in the film. Anderson wanted room to improvise and find humor in situations where the movie had played everything straight. The second was structural. The show had to be a genuine ensemble. He would not be the sole load-bearing column of another long-running series. The producers agreed on both counts. O'Neill's humor became one of SG-1's defining qualities, and the ensemble, Shanks tapping Judge Davis, was built with enough strength that the show could, and eventually did, continue without him. Anderson's conditions for saying yes shaped the show's tone for 10 seasons. Fact 11. The 3 unknowns bonded before they knew they were all cast. After Anderson accepted the lead role, Brad Wright and Jonathan Glassner reviewed several thousand taped auditions and invited approximately 25 actors to screen tests in Los Angeles. Michael Shanks, Amanda Tapping, and Christopher Judge were 3 of those 25 candidates. What the producers noticed during the process was that the 3 of them had gravitated toward each other in the waiting areas and on breaks, forming a natural social unit before anyone had confirmed they were all getting the parts. The chemistry the producers were hoping to engineer on screen was already happening off it. Shanks, Tapping, and Judge were paid the least of the main cast as the relative unknowns in the ensemble, and during the pilot they all stayed in the same hotel and lived, as Tapping later described it, out of each other's pockets. That proximity built the foundation of a friendship that held the show together long after Anderson's role began to diminish. Fact 10. Christopher Judge had already appeared on MacGyver with Anderson. Christopher Judge walked into the Stargate SG-1 audition as a stranger to the production. He was not a stranger to its lead. In 1990, 7 years before SG-1 began, Judge had guest starred in an episode of MacGyver as a high school student that MacGyver mentors Richard Dean. Anderson was in that episode. They had worked together on the same set for at least part of a shoot. Anderson later admitted openly that he had no memory of the encounter. The two men, who would spend 8 seasons as colleagues on one of television's longest-running science fiction shows, had already shared a frame years earlier, and one of them had completely forgotten about it. Judge's audition for Teal'c went smoothly for reasons that had nothing to do with the prior connection. The producers found him the easiest role to cast from the moment he walked in. They looked at him and, by multiple accounts, told everyone else to go home. Fact 9. The extra L in O'Neill was Anderson's personal decision. In the 1994 film, Kurt Russell played Colonel Jack O'Neill, one L at the end of the surname. When Richard Dean Anderson took the role for the television series, he changed the spelling to O'Neill to L's. The decision was deliberate and specific. Anderson did not want his version of the character to be directly tied to Russell's portrayal. A single additional letter in a surname was his way of establishing distance, signaling that this was a different character with a different sensibility, carrying the same name, but not the same energy. The show later made the spelling difference explicit in dialogue, with Daniel Jackson noting at one point that there are 2 L's in O'Neill for a reason, a character distinction that began as a personal branding decision by the lead actor, was eventually written into the show's own mythology as something that mattered. Fact 8. Don S. Davis was already connected to MacGyver. Before anyone called him Don S. Davis, who played General George Hammond throughout SG-1's first 7 seasons came to the production through a connection to MacGyver that predated the call. Davis had worked as a stand-in and stunt double for Dana Elcar, who played Pete Thornton on MacGyver. Throughout that show's run, the producers knew his face from that association and approached him to read for Hammond. What they got was an actor with a doctorate in theater who had spent years doing physical work in someone else's shadow. Davis brought an authority and a warmth to Hammond that the show's institutional scenes depended on entirely. He stayed through season 7 before health problems forced him to reduce his role. He continued making guest appearances until his death from a heart attack on June 29, 2008. The general who commanded the most important facility on Earth had spent the early part of his career falling down for another actor on a different show. Fact 7. The swooshing vortex effect was made with a jet engine in a pool. The kawoosh, the distinctive visual of the Stargate activating, sending a burst of liquid light outward before collapsing back into the event horizon, was not a purely digital creation. The production created the effect by positioning a jet engine above a pool of water and using the thrust to disturb the surface at the precise angle and speed required to generate the right visual on camera. The footage was then enhanced and composited with digital elements to produce the final image audiences saw every time a gate activated. The swoosh became one of the most recognizable sound and visual combinations in science fiction television history. It appears in every spin-off, every film, every subsequent entry in the franchise. The effect, built from a jet engine and a swimming pool, became so inseparable from the franchise's identity that reproducing it faithfully in later productions was considered non-negotiable. Some things you get right the first time and never change. Fact 6. 2 Air Force Chiefs of Staff made cameos on the show. The U.S. Air Force maintained a close and cooperative relationship with Stargate SG-1 throughout its run, providing authentic uniforms, accurate ranks and ribbons, and ongoing consultation about military procedure. The relationship ran deep enough that 2 sitting Air Force Chiefs of Staff made actual on-screen appearances. General Michael Ryan and General John Jumper both appeared in episodes of the show during their respective tenures as the Air Force's highest-ranking officer. The service ribbons worn by Air Force characters were carefully chosen to accurately reflect each character's fictional biography. General Hammond's ribbons, for example, included the Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross with bronze palm, Consistent with his established backstory, a science fiction show about a secret military facility under Cheyenne Mountain was taken seriously enough by the actual military that the people running the real Air Force showed up to be in it. Fact 5. The golf ball scene was added because they finished early. One of Stargate SG-1's most beloved sequences, the moment in the Season 4 episode Window of Opportunity when O'Neill and Teal'c, stuck in an endless time loop, spend their repeating day hitting golf balls through the active Stargate, was not scripted. The episode had been filmed and came in under time. The production had run short and needed additional footage to fill the running length. The writers added the golf ball sequence to pad the runtime. What began as a logistical solution became one of the most quoted and celebrated moments in the show's 10-season run, a bit of physical comedy invented to solve a scheduling problem. Richard Dean Anderson and Christopher Judge in Air Force uniforms teeing off into a dimensional portal became the scene that generations of fans cite as their first memory of understanding what the show was really about at its core. Some of the best moments in television history were accidents. Fact 4. The show was running 2 productions simultaneously at full scale. In its final years, Stargate SG-1 was not the only show being made on its stages. Stargate Atlantis launched in 2004 and was filmed on adjoining sound stages at the Bridge Studios in Vancouver. Both shows aired in adjoining time slots. Both ran 20-episode seasons simultaneously. The production team that had been making SG-1 was now making 40 hours of television every year, without proportionally expanding the workforce. Sets, props, makeup artists, directors, and writers were shared between the 2 productions. The same people who had been building one science fiction universe were now building 2 side by side on stages separated by a wall. The budgetary logic made sense. The human cost of producing 40 hours of genre television annually with a single team was considerable. SG-1 ran its final 3 seasons in direct production alongside Atlantis and delivered both shows on schedule. It remains one of the most logistically demanding production arrangements in American science fiction television history. Fact 3. Michael Shanks left over, being underused, and was replaced by an actor. Found in a courtyard when Showtime announced it would not renew SG-1 after Season 5, Michael Shanks used the transition to voice something he had been sitting with: a belief that Daniel Jackson was being systematically underutilized. He chose not to return for the show's move to the Sci-Fi channel. The producers needed a new character to fill the 4th team slot. Casting agents met Corin Nemec entirely by chance in the courtyard of MGM's Santa Monica offices. He was there for an unrelated meeting. They offered him the role on the spot and he accepted. Nemec played Jonas Quinn through Season 6. When Shanks was persuaded to return for Season 7, Nemec was moved to a recurring role. An actor discovered by accident in a parking lot held a lead role on one of television's longest-running science fiction series. For a full season, he did it well enough that when the original cast member came back, the transition required genuine diplomacy rather than simply a swap. Fact 2. Anderson left to be a father, and the show rewrote itself around his absence. Richard Dean Anderson's departure from Stargate SG-1 as a series regular was gradual and deliberate. He had begun reducing his episode count from Season 6 onward. The production accommodated him by promoting O'Neill to Brigadier General and placing him in command of the SGC, keeping the character relevant while reducing his physical presence on set. Anderson's reason was specific. His daughter was reaching an age where he wanted to be consistently present in her life, and the filming schedule in Vancouver made that impossible at full commitment. By Season 9, he was gone as a regular, replaced by Ben Browder and Beau Bridges as new lead characters. The show didn't collapse around the vacancy, and it reconstituted itself. That ability to absorb major cast changes and continue functioning speaks to the ensemble architecture Anderson had demanded as a condition of joining in the first place. He had insisted from the start that no single person should be indispensable. He was right. The show outlasted him by 2 full seasons. Fact 1. Roland Emmerich despises the show and never stopped saying so. Roland Emmerich directed the 1994 Stargate film with the intention of turning it into a movie franchise. a trilogy of theatrical releases that would expand the universe he and Dean Devlin had built. When MGM sold the television rights and Stargate SG-1 was developed without his involvement, Emmerich lost control of the property he had created. He has been direct about his feelings ever since. He loathes the television series. His objection is not personal, it is proprietary. The show made choices about the mythology, the characters, and the world that directly contradicted the film's continuity and moved the franchise in directions he had never intended. SG-1 ran for 10 seasons. It spawned 3 additional series. It became the longest-running North American science fiction television show in history. It built a fandom that still exists and still grows. Roland Emmerich made the film that started all of it and has hated everything that followed, like the man who opened the gate never walked through it. Everyone else did for 10 years without him. And there you have it, 14 weird facts about Stargate SG-1. A show built on a rotting prop, powered by a jet engine in a pool, kept alive by actors who bonded in a hotel hallway, and despised by the man whose idea it was. Which fact hit hardest? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into the shows that built worlds nobody expected to last. Until next time.